We are thrilled to have Mr. Ralph Nodine with us tonight. As many of you know, Ralph spent more than 10 years with Maine Angels. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Maine Angels, it has dispersed over $44 million to Maine and New England companies since it was created in 2003. More than 100 companies have received investment. Ralph was overseeing Maine Angels as their chair for quite a while, and before that, before Maine Angels, Ralph spent decades in economic development, founding the Virginia Community Development Corporation and overseeing more than $400 million in community investments. Of course, that impressive career is all leading up to being a Dirigo Labs mentor for us this year, graciously offering his time to many of our companies, as well as a SCORE certified mentor. And we asked Ralph to be here during this first week of our Dirigo Raise portion of the program as we lead up to thinking about how we'll be going out, looking for investment, talking to investors, and overall communicating our cohort companies to the public as partners or investors. So thank you very much, Ralph, and please help me welcome Ralph Nodine.
Thank you for having me. I've had a chance to meet some of you online and now today in person, and I'm always very impressed with the work that Dirigo does, and this seems like a wonderful cohort, at least what I've seen so far.
It's an impressive group for sure. We're just trying to keep up with them mostly. You're a Colby alum.
Yes.
And so a little bit of a homecoming for you, and then studied at the University of New Hampshire. Can you walk us through a little bit your early career and what led you up to being an angel investor?
Well, first of all, I always find it awkward when people say I had a career. I always thought I just did a bunch of stuff that was fun and made a living. Career sounds organized and planned, you know. I mean, this wasn't that at all. Yeah, after I got out of Colby, I was a sociology major, so the jobs I weren't anywhere available. So I joined the Peace Corps. When I came back, the little town my parents lived in, New Hampshire, had somebody was going to put 1,500 second homes in it, and all the planners did was they had these maps with different soils, and so you put a house here because it has the right soil. Nobody thought about the economics of what that meant to the community and what that was going to do to a whole lot of other things. So University of New Hampshire had a program that was actually the Department of Agricultural Economics. There wasn't much agriculture, so they switched over and started doing resource economics with a specialty in community development. So I went there and got a master's degree. Went there, got a master's degree. So, you know, that's just sort of all accidental. Then my first job out of grad school was in Fort Wayne, and I was an economic development planner, and we did a plan. One of the things in the plan was that we wanted to create a local development company to basically help package SBA loans and participate in SBA loans for companies in the city. And the guy that was supposed to go to the training on how to do credit analysis had some bug or something, so he couldn't go, so I went and spent a week learning how to analyze financial statements, and so that's what started it all.
Wow.
I found out I was good at something I didn't think I was going to be.
And then can you talk a little bit about the working in affordable housing and the founding of the Community Development Corps?
After Fort Wayne, I worked for a company, the National Development Council. Well, I actually was the downtown development director for Lewiston for 3 years. I spent, nobody here knows who Henry Kissinger was, but thank you. We could give a test and ask, but basically I walked up and down the street playing Henry Kissinger, trying to keep the merchants from killing each other as we were revitalizing the downtown. And then I got, the people who trained me in the finance was National Development Council. So I spent a few years traveling the country, helping local communities put together programs and help finance deals. And then, I don't know, you know.
And then you found yourself back in Maine?
Actually, I never left Maine. I mean, I left Maine to go to Fort Wayne, and other than that, I've lived in Maine the whole time.
Oh, wow.
I was one of the very early telecommuters.
Oh,
And I ran Virginia CDC, which, you know, we created equity funds that invested in affordable housing deals. I did that from Maine. I mean, it was, I started it. They said, can you please stay and run it? And I said, my kids are in high school. And they said, you know, you don't have to move.
I just want to learn a little bit about this. Could you explain maybe a typical deal that your company would do for a housing development or a typical project?
Actually, you had somebody come here and talk about historic credits a while back somewhere. Anyway, we did mostly affordable housing. We also did historic deals. All the deals that we did in one way or another had some sort of tax credit associated with it. And so what we would do is go out and raise money from corporations, most of whom were banks, and then we would invest it in individual projects that you know, had the tax credits. So if you were building some affordable housing, you know, we would come in as your partner and provide the equity portion of that, and our investors would get a return through tax credits and other tax benefits. And we were different than many people that did that in that we were very, very hands-on in terms of the, we did deals with little rural groups in places in Virginia and Kentucky. You know, we worked with housing authorities that had never done a deal like that before. I mean, we were just very hands-on and tried to add value to the process. So we were different than, there were a lot of people doing this on a for-profit basis. You know, we were different in that we just put a lot of effort and tried to add a lot of value to the process. And yeah.
And how did you make the transition into angel investing? It seems like some of the same skill sets or evaluation processes.
Yeah, and I'd done a lot of business financing early in my career. And I'd done a lot of business financing, and I'd always was aware of sort of this earlier stage type of financing because, you know, generally business financing it's the history, it's the business, you know, they're cash banks, and we were participating with banks, are cash flow lenders, they're collateral lenders, and so you're looking at history and analyzing history and seeing how it's happened as opposed to having you guys know history and trying to figure, you know, create it out of whole cloth. But I was aware of that type of financing, and it always very interested me. And I think this is, the whole career thing comes back again. One day as I was, you know, I retired, but I was still being paid for a while as sort of to be there available in case something got screwed up. There was an article, I think it was the Portland paper about Maine Angels.
Oh, okay.
So I contacted somebody and they invited me to a meeting and I joined.
Now, just so we're all on the same page about the definitions, can you help define what an angel investor is versus maybe an institutional investor or venture capital investor?
Angel, yeah, let's just start. Angel investors, mostly they're putting their own money in the deal. Typically, you know, an angel group like Maine Angels works like a federation in that not everybody invests in every deal. You know, 5 of us get together and we like Steve's deal, and you know, we work with Steve and make a deal and invest in his company. And so the group what the group does is, there's an application process if people want to apply. It's always better if you sort of know somebody that helps walk you through that application process. But, and then we go through the process and pick the companies that we would like to have come pitch. And they pitch, and then if people are interested, those people get together and work with the company to, and we're sort of getting ahead of the process, but work with the company to come to an agreement as to how our equity is going to go in, what the terms are going to be, what we promise to do to each other, or do for each other, and you know, how much would be invested.
So you wouldn't say an angel group necessarily has an existing or determined thesis for its investing. It can be individual. Something you like, maybe you want to invest in healthcare and I want to invest in IT. Or...
Yes. If you're actually gonna carry the name angel investor, it should be a company that's scalable. The investment should be largely, you know, equity or equity-like. Mm-hmm. Companies, and generally, you know, relatively earlier stage, much earlier than venture capitals or in private equity or institutional investors.
And a lot of the companies here have not spoken with investors yet, or are just having the first conversations. Can you, from your perspective, when a young company is reaching out to their first investor, what are some of the characteristics or aspects of that first communication that might put up red flags to folks at Maine Angels or elsewhere?
Joke, I'm an introvert, I can't talk and think at the same time. Some of you I've said that to. I think that you should be doing a lot of talking to people before you start approaching directly a group like Maine Angels. Yeah. And just, there are 30 or more angel groups around around New England. The New England Angel Groups are compact. We have an agreement to share diligence and to work on each other's deals. We refer deals to each other. It doesn't happen as much as it maybe should, but so you share a deal. So, Maine Angels is looking at something, they're interested, they can't do the whole thing, it can go to that network. And I think that worked better prior to COVID, because now everybody tries to do it online, whereas it just somehow, we would invite every quarter 10 companies from different angel groups to come in and do pitches to 80 or 90 people who would show up at the, representing all the other angel groups. And it was, pretty effective in terms of, getting the word out on a company that is looking for capital. And doesn't work quite as well virtually. But there's still, at least within individuals within Maine Angels, contacts, and I have contacts with a few of the other angel groups. Other people in Maine Angels have contacts with some of the others, and so, if we can spread the word that way.
Who used to coordinate those larger gatherings?
The Angel Capital Association, which is, I believe it was the New England chapter of it.
Yeah, sounds useful.
It was also kind of cool because we would sit down for, the chairs would sit down for an hour ahead of time and, talk about what problems they were running into, what are you seeing, what are people asking for, what's reasonable, what's not, where have you gotten burned? No, yeah, I mean, that's yeah. And burned doesn't mean somebody tried to rip you off, it's just, it just didn't work.
And I imagine in some of that, for a young company, your reputation continues. How you deal with one investor might be spread, or a reputation or something moved around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. If I got hurt by a deal and
But-
you're my friend, I might let you know before you put money into
Yes,
this.
but if you're hurt by a deal because it just didn't work,
There's that, yeah.
there's no shame in that.
Or if a founder was dishonest.
That isn't cool.
Yeah. So honesty, that's,
Honesty, transparency, treat your investors like your investors or partners. I mean, all of that I think is important in terms of reputation. If the deal just doesn't work, and as long as you didn't run away with the money, mismanage it, or something like that, that happens. It's 50% of the deals tank. The rest of them, only a few of them really only a few of them get to a big round.
that's a better ratio than I would have thought.
Well, that's 50% or it
It's just-
includes The Walking Dead.
Okay, so money's in, they're existing, but they're not really
Yeah,
paying back much.
yeah, I mean, I forgot there are some good books on angel investing, and I can actually give you the references to
Great.
it. And you might, they're common sense, they're easy to read, even I can read them, and they kind of tell everything sort of from an angel investor perspective, and if you want to get that, spend a few hours reading the book.
So because angel investing can be very individualistic and subjective for that group, maybe, like you're saying, 5 angels who might want to collaborate on an investment, it must be beneficial for a company to get to know some of the individual investors.
Yeah, that's when I said that you should be talking to people before you're really asking for money, because you'll learn a lot. And I think that people that I've talked to in terms of mentoring, I've suggested that you kind of get out and start talking to people. And I was never that good at sales, but you sort of build a relationship before you ask for the sale. And you can go out and talk to somebody about your company. Generally, and in Maine in particular, I think it's one of the advantages. It's not lots of money here, but everybody will talk to you. And so talk to people, get feedback before you're really ready to ask for money. Like people will tell you sort of, what they think. And if you're not in the fundraising mode at that time, it's almost better because, you get real feedback as if there's not necessarily, without there being a real ask that they've got to make a judgment on. They can say, well, this is kind of the way I see it. I think that's going to be a tough sell. Maybe if you did it this way, you will learn. And maybe if they just say that it's going to be a tough sell, you start, okay, why? And that gives you a chance to start reframing your thoughts about how the business will unfold, or maybe what the business, maybe the business, you shift the direction a little bit. You have a chance to tailor your deal to, what would work, and get a lot of free advice if you just, talk to people.
And if I'm a young company and I'm saying, I know I'm going to need to bring some financing on board, and I'd love to just have 10 conversations with angels, what's the best way to reach out to somebody? Do you cold email or try and catch them at the grocery store and bump into them and ask them?
Yes, Jeff, he knows everybody. You talk to one, talk to one, get 2 other names.
Yep. Ask for references and...
Ask for, hey, can you just, anybody else that might be interested or that might be able to be helpful, and, get a name and an introduction. And if they'll introduce you, great. If nothing else, they'll say, something, whatever, who. They wouldn't do it with Ralph, but Ralph gave me your name.
It sounds like this is all part of an early stage of the due diligence process. You mentioned the due diligence process, it's always referenced and it's different for different people and different organizations. Can you walk us through kind of what a typical due diligence might be at Maine Angels?
You're going to have Audrey here next week, but I think.
Audrey Loans, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through sort of, assuming you haven't talked to anybody first. Over the transom, and some of those, some deals work. You basically apply online. First of all, you've done something. What might that be? Oh, I'm not. Yeah, what might you do before you apply?
Your own research.
Your own research. Good. What would that be?
Like who's who and what am I doing, and
Yeah.
do you have a business plan, perhaps?
Go to the website and look. The Maine Angels website, and every angel group has it. What are they looking for? This is, it tells you. We want scalable businesses. We'd like to see minimum viable product. I don't have the whole thing memorized, but I mean, that sort of thing. It's all there. So, be at least reasonably close to a fit. Then you basically, you do an application. Mm-hmm. And then every month, the screening committee meets, and the screening committee there's 4 or 5 leaders, and then any member can show up at a screening committee meeting. And then they go through all the deals that have applied and pick 2 or 3 to pitch. If you pitch, you're invited, there's a monthly meeting. You think you're given 15 minutes to talk, you're given 15 minutes for questions, and then you get out of the room and we talk about you for 15 minutes. Then the question is, anybody interested? Somebody's interested. And then 4 or 5 people are interested. Often it's more than that, at least early on. Then there's always the fight about, who's going to lead the deal, but that's internally, you'll never see that. So then those people will arrange for a deep dive.
Rob, can you say a little bit more about what it means to lead a deal?
Yeah. You got a group of people looking at Steve's deal. Somebody acts as kind of a lead person in that, just coordinating the group, coordinating the initial meeting. But your question also has another answer to it in another context, so let me hit that in a minute. So it's basically the main angel that is the main source of contact, sets up the meeting, coordinates it, divvies out the diligence report to a number of people. So there'll be a deep dive meeting, spend 2 hours just asking questions and talking about it. And out of that will come a bunch of requests for more information. And then there's a whole iterative process where you get comfortable with the investors, and mostly, since you're looking for money, they get comfortable with the deal. And then if you've gotten to that stage and there's still people that are interested, then people start talking about terms and term sheets and how it's going to work. And then your question is, anytime there is more than one angel group in a deal, and typically that will be the case, and that more than one angel group could also include Maine Venture Fund or CEI. CBI is for the equity. Then you're going to have one of those groups is going to be the leader. And so in the same, so you have the leader in each individual group, and then you have the leader, the lead investor. And typically the lead investor is more experienced in the deal, more experienced in doing the type of deal that you're doing, and does most of the negotiation and the paperwork, so that, you know, you're not stuck talking to 50 different individuals. It wouldn't be 50, but, you know, 20 individuals. You would go bonkers.
Thank you.
So that lead investor, let's say in a Maine Angels type of group, that's your internal champion?
Yes.
So that maybe is a true believer. This is a company I want to support, and I want to go gather the rest of the fund, the rest of the round that they're trying to fill. So
Yes. And that might be the person that starts to, you know, network, you know, if there's not enough Maine Angels there, that might be the person that would help get the word out of that, on that deal in you know, to the New England consort, you know, group. I think, you know, it's with Maine Angels, and I believe that this is true of other angel groups. It helps if you have, before you apply, somebody who likes the deal. That doesn't always happen. I mean, that's 30% of the deals that pitch. But it really helps, because one, they show up at the screening committee, and the fact that there's somebody there that's looked at the deal and is interested generally improves the chance that you're going to be picked to pitch. And then in the meeting, you know, after the questions, when you go out of the room and we talk about you, you know, typically, person will raise their hand and say, hey, you know, I've looked at this, and give their sense of the deal, and, you know, what they think of it, and what they see as strengths and weaknesses, and how they've interacted already with the entrepreneur, how they feel about the entrepreneur, whether they're upfront, transparent, and coachable. It's always better to appear coachable, even if you no. Considered coachable or not. No, I mean, you want to be somebody who listens to people. You don't have to buy everything. If you did everything everybody told you to do, you wouldn't be successful. But filter it and learn from what you hear from others, and at least filter it, learn from others, and listen. And if you disagree, talk to the person who's, you know, say, look, this is why we're doing it, and I think people respect that. Because you do know your business better than anybody else does, which might be scary.
So on that point, you're talking about a mix of the team and the quality of the team and the quality of the individuals, and then there is the quality of the product and the value proposition. But am I right in understanding from your last point that maybe angel investors don't need to understand exactly how the sausage is made or how the product is created, maybe especially in some of the technical terms, if they believe in the founder? Or do you try to have somebody...
The founder is going to know, you know, go ahead.
I was thinking, or does the angel group maybe always want to have somebody who can confirm the tech, maybe a tech expert?
You can get that done other ways.
Okay.
And you're not going to have somebody that understands. I think within the group of Maine Angels, you probably have somebody that has a general understanding of that type of business and that type of product, and to some extent, you know, how the sausage is made. You know, you bring other things to the table. You know, every business is different. You bring other things to the table, so you can get outside evaluations. You know, it helps to have somebody that understands it. Most of the people are, I mean, they're smart people. So you got to be able to explain it to a smart person, and if you can't, then something's wrong with... People will spend enough time digging, and, you know, if you're making sense, they'll know it.
I focus on that point.
And we all
because-
make mistakes though, too.
Fair
Go
enough. I focus on that point because we have several companies who, well, most of the companies here are founders who have spent decades and decades in their field and have very specific technical solutions. And there's a challenge sometimes to convey that succinctly and effectively without overgeneralizing the large value that they bring through their company. So it sounds like a bit of a balance, but you have to be able to explain it.
Yeah. You do. You have to be able to explain it. It has to make sense. I mean, you're going to have to explain it to customers too. I mean, your customer, you solve the problem, but they kind of want to know how you're doing it, so that it builds their faith in your ability to produce.
Mm-hmm. So we're at the point now, a check has been written, founder received their check. Let's say 5 angels were part of the round.
Well, there was a whole negotiation about
Oh,
terms.
let's do that. Let's go
Well,
talk a term sheet. Yeah.
I don't think the scope of this would get into details of term sheets, but there will be a term sheet. There will be certain expectations on both sides. The angel side is they're going to write a check. Your side is, you're going to have a real board of directors. They're not all going to be you. That you will have to do regular reporting. That there will be board meetings and reporting to investors, and there'll be certain things that you can and can't do without permission of the investors. And I think that's a reasonable overview. I've probably forgotten 6 things.
Well, that highlights a really important point for a startup going to an investment group like Maine Angels, that to have some conception of what your board's going to look like. Who would be your first 3 members and why?
Yes, and they can't, there's going to be some outside people. This is governance.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I have questions. So can you give us some examples of like the terms of what people can and cannot do in some type of experience, past experience? Just because it's hard to understand that if you've never worked with an investor.
Reporting.
That
It
seems simple.
really pisses me off when people don't do the reporting, even though they promised to in the agreement. And but besides that, you're not being transparent. You don't know what's going on in the company when those people come back for more money. Meh. It'll have things like you can't spend $20,000 without permission of the board. And the board's going to have at least some sort of outside person on it. You can't go buy a Lamborghini. Well, I can't pronounce it. You can't.
Maserati.
Yeah. I mean, that's a capital expenditure, so that limit that. There may be salary caps initially. I mean, it depends on a lot of things. I mean, and then the next round has to, probably the class of investors that is in the first round, has some rights to approve the next round, which is all designed just to make sure that they just don't get wiped out.
Right. So it's mostly financial. It's not necessarily like choose this vendor. I have to approve like hiring this employee.
Oh,
That's-
no. Go ahead.
A related question to that, I was curious about pivoting. So with angel investors, sometimes the company might have an idea to pivot, or then, maybe the angel investors want you to pivot to AI space, incorporate. And I'm curious if you run into that, how that gets negotiated if the company should pivot, in the whole lean approach?
That's a business decision that would generally have board approval of some kind. I mean, that's a major strategic decision that's, that would be discussed at the board level. The investors are not gonna have to approve, a pivot.
Have you found, you guys ever, from the Maine Angel side, have you driven a pivot, asked the startup to consider pivot?
It wouldn't happen, it would happen at the board level. A group of, the investors investors might bug the board about it, but what you normally see is that the company's floundering, so, what are you gonna do to fix it? And I don't think typically the investors, angel investors aren't gonna come in and tell you how to fix it. They just want to see that you're fixing it. VCs might start dictating stuff like that, but angel investors are generally not going to.
So it sounds like in that early relationship, more information is better than less?
Yes.
Or do you stay in regular contact? How frequently I've just received some money from Maine Angels. How often do you want to hear from me?
Generally reporting is quarterly, and I think you ought to be able to produce a financial, and financials ought to be included, and then a narrative of some kind.
And board minutes, or maybe a board deck?
Board minutes probably aren't going to be required, because you might be talking, then you have an edit of if there's personnel stuff in it and so forth. But I think if an investor requested board minutes, I'd say you should be, if it's, transparency would be, yeah, sure. You're not, you don't have anything to hide.
Oversharing? Yeah.
You could, yeah, I don't think, generally that's not going to be one of the requirements.
Mm-hmm. Noah, did you have a question?
I was just wondering for Maine Angels, what, if any, percentage of the deals that were closed in the last year or two are using safe rounds, as we're talking about requirements?
Well, I haven't been very involved in the last year or so. I told somebody that I was, and I apologized for it after I said I hate safes. And I don't like to use the word hate because I just, it's not a good word. And this is personal. This is just, I think a safe was designed to bridge a period that's relatively short with a very high likelihood that something's going to happen to make the safe activate the safe within a fairly short period of time. It's designed in California where somebody's 3 months away from their round and they need some money to get through. That's a perfectly reasonable use of the safe. But a safe becomes a weird evergreen thing if you never have a round. How does it get taken out? It just sits there forever. Safe also, generally because of its, I think its origin, and I'm not an expert on the history of them, there are not many investor rights put in there. And typically, all you're given is those are the major issues.
Have you participated in any saves?
Yes, I lied. One.
But
it was much more. It had a lot of the things that would normally go into an equity agreement. It actually had a period at which it does convert. It was more almost like a convertible note.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for hitting on this. Do you mind discussing
Well, that's, what's safe? It's an agreement for future,
Saving, or
it's like a warrant.
saving after, yeah, it's like a warrant. When you exit, when you go through another round, that capital gets converted to the ratios and valuation of the new one.
So basically, you don't get the upside that might have happened in
Right.
in the interim period. And two, if you don't have the round, you just sit there on something that's nothing but a dead piece of paper. You're nodding your head. I thought you'd be on the other side of that.
Well, we used to do a lot of warrants.
You know, then there's equity, which is usually preferred stock. And then there's convertible debt, which basically converts. It usually, the problem with, some banks will consider that real debt when it's really not. That would tend to have all, you know, a lot of the protections and stuff that I talked about, you know, and it converts to stock either on it's typically due in 2 years. It converts to stock if there's a if there's a triggering event, which, you know, is defined in the documents. And if no triggering event happens, then it converts it, then it's actually due at the end of 2 years. And having been there, there's no money to pay it, so it ends up converting to preferred stock, hopefully. But it was designed as, it would be simpler. You didn't have to spend so much time fighting about the price or the value of the company.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is that the preferred vehicle for Maine Angels? Convertible note?
They're probably getting more comfortable with safes than they should, but yes. Or equity, or a priced round. I mean, I always, if you're gonna have a convertible note, I want a cap so that I get the upside. So then you're sort of kind of getting you're starting to negotiate all the things you negotiate on a priced round. But it is a little simpler to put together, I guess.
Steve, did you?
I looked at some time ago, Maine Angels, and this is some time ago, and I understand there's been additions, an influx of angels, and there's been more process. And I appreciate and don't have any bone to pick with sort of the preferred Delaware C Corp, price preferred. But I think it would be helpful because there is some scuttlebutt around safes versus that first price round. And we heard from an M&A guy the past couple of weeks that it's even changed now. It's do 3, 4, 5 safes and then do a price round at 10 million plus. And I think that's complicated. It might be helpful for Maine Angels if either on a blog piece or on the site there was a statement of position on safes versus that first preferred round. Because they're in fashion, they're being used, kind of nebulous as you said, but it's pretty clear on the site that the structure does C Corp, price round of preferred, and there's some confusion about that. That might be helpful if there was some clarity on that.
They may not have updated the website. I'm sorry, I haven't been super actively involved for the past 18 months. And there have been an influx of a lot of new people.
So, we talked a little bit earlier about how, Maine angel investing oftentimes is, you could see it as somewhat charity. It's helping out people, young companies, when they might not be eligible for the other types of financing that they need to grow. And we talked about how pretty good rate of maybe 50% failure. How do you think about failure when you look at a startup as it's maybe spent through its money and not made it to the next stage? There are a lot of different ways to fail and causes of it. I don't necessarily, does it say something about a founder entirely? If a company has failed and then they have to walk away as a loss.
Well, the good thing about having partners is you're all in this together. I don't think, you know, we tried something, we knew what we were getting into, it didn't work, okay, you know, we don't, you know, there's not a personal, you know, there's not a personal, like, that guy really screwed up. I mean, you know, if you didn't competently, you know, and everybody makes mistakes, and people can understand mistakes. I mean, if but, yeah, so as long as I think that you've done what you can, that you've acted honorably, you've been transparent through the process, you've listened to your board and to the investors, and there just wasn't the market for the product that you thought there was, or you just couldn't execute it in a way that people could understand, you know, that worked. That's a mistake that everybody made, you know, everybody knew what they were getting into. I mean, I don't think there's any shame in that, and there's, you know, it's not gonna be a blank spot on somebody's reputation. Mismanage it, not list, you know, go off on tangents and pivots that you know, you haven't talked to the board or anybody else about, and those all don't work, you're probably not seen as a sort of dependable fiduciary of people's money and hopes.
I wanted to focus on that point because sometimes when money's running out and a company's struggling and the fear of failure is setting in, it can feel easy to just keep showing the public face, the bright face, even to investors. And it can borderline sometimes on not being fully transparent, where even in the process of failing, the transparency can be a part of your character and showing investors it's not something new. I mean, an investor...
Tricky when you're trying to raise more money.
For sure,
yeah. And I think, you know, I've talked to, I forgot who was on the phone when I made this up, M&M, Money and Milestones. You know, the problems are going to come when it costs more to reach the milestone than you expected. But, you know, your next round, there should be a milestone. It should be better. You know, you want the company, it should be more, you want the company to be more valuable the second time you come. You gotta have proven something that you hadn't proven before. That's a milestone. I mean, and you know, what does it cost to get to that milestone? And you know, you gotta be pretty, got to do a pretty good job of trying to plan that out. And if you come back to investors saying we've gotten most of the way, but we really haven't gotten to that milestone. When we get to that milestone, the company will be worth more. A lot of investors will be willing to pony up some more money. You know, if you've been transparent and mutually respectful.
And on the path to that next round, you've collected data. You can make a data-based argument for that next milestone. Oftentimes in the first stage, where a lot of our companies are, or getting to the first stage of an investment, you have a lot of theory. You don't have a lot of practice. And I mean, I guess I'm just talking in circle around. When you can, talk numbers. When you can have numbers to prove your point, talk numbers. I wanted to ask about the Maine ecosystem. You've been in the Maine startup ecosystem for quite a while, and you've seen the trends. Talked a little bit about safes, but what are you seeing in terms of trends in the Maine startup ecosystem? What could our state's startup community have that we don't have?
You know, I think in the last 10 years, they're more than that, but I think that there's generally more money around. I mean, there are more people, there's more deals, but there's more money around. I think that what I said before is generally you can get a meeting and you can talk to the people who are funders even, before you're ready, because people are willing to, help encourage and nurture you. I think that my sense is that the New England Compact of Angel Groups, which is outside of the Maine ecosystem, but it was something that could be brought into the Maine ecosystem, is a little less stronger than it used to be, and it's more dependent upon individual relationships as opposed to the New England ACA
I see.
getting together. But that's, I think it's generally, we got a pretty good ecosystem. We have Dirigo Labs, what else do we need?
Quote. Will, cut that. Do you think there's more money because there are more investors, more people saying I want to be a part of a group like Maine Angels, or just more capital flowing around?
I think there's a lot of money came in during the COVID period with, to FAME, to CVI, to, that money.
Okay.
And yeah, I think there are more investors. Maine Angels has, how active they are, new members, I don't know, but they've really expanded membership.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we have more startups than we've had in the past. I know it's hard, it's difficult. I mean, obviously, one thing that we talk about at Dirigo Labs so oftentimes is around, it takes a lot of bravery to go start a company and to put yourself out on that limb to do it. And sometimes when it's during times of economic turmoil, it might be harder to go off and initiate a new company. So, do you think there are more startups today than maybe 10 years ago?
I don't have real statistics.
Yeah.
If you want gut, it seems like there are.
Yeah.
And as I said, there's a good ecosystem. MTI has their limits and quirks, and I'm sure they can be frustrating, but not every state has something like that.
There's definitely been that reverse brain drain of, kind of post-COVID, a lot of people coming back to Maine and,
Yeah, when I was chair, and I was chair all the way through COVID and beyond, I was getting calls from people who were all over the country who had some sort of Maine roots that were interested in what was happening. Now, how many of them really did anything with it is another matter, but yeah, there was a lot of interest.
Yeah. Well, so for a founder sitting here in the room, thinking about the most important thing that you'd want them to understand before talking to their first investor, whether it's just a fact-finding mission for advice, what are some key things that they should take away before that first conversation?
Be able to relatively easily articulate in few sentences, what problem you're solving, how you're solving it, and who will pay you to solve it. Be able to explain how you do what you do. That was a question I asked you, and I still don't totally understand it, but that's, we didn't...
I'm getting there.
No, I was looking behind you. but we were both watching Jeff to see when he was going to call us out. So, be able to relatively, be able to explain how it works, and to be able to articulate it in a way that's simple for even Ralph to understand. those are the key things. If you have minimum viable product, talk about that.
Demos, you know.
Yeah, but if you're asking sort of for advice and bounce ideas, and you can do this in a way that if you're asking for something, then you're judged. If your early conversations are more general, this is what we're doing, how do you advise we proceed, who do you advise that we talk to, people aren't going to judge, and so you can be less good. I mean, this is partly how you learn how to explain how the sausage gets made in 25 words or less. And I don't think you could do it. I don't mean you couldn't, yours is, and people will ask questions, and you'll get used to answering those, and be sensitive to whether the person's, whether it's making sense to the person you're talking to.
Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I had. I'd like to open it up for anyone in the room. Might have follow-on questions.
We answered every question. Go ahead, Gavin.
Yeah, sorry, somebody popped in. I was just gonna, you touched, and thank you again, Ralph, that was spectacular, and thank you to the Maine Angels.
It was fun.
Thanks again. Folks will hear from Audrey, I believe, next week, shortly thereafter. You discussed the fluidity of the pitch and the due diligence at Maine Angels, and apologies for the general question, but can you share any insights on what are almost common trappings on the operations or the financing when the Angels are getting a pitch or the deck that makes a company not get through? Common kind of pitfalls you see in that operational or financial pitch, if you will.
Well, when two founders argue with each other in front of the group, that doesn't help.
Don't do that.
It comes down to, talk about exit. I guess you're asking me the things that disqualify. Talk about exit. To me, it made me feel better that at least you were respectful enough to mention it. That you've at least thought about it. At least it's on your radar. Not being able to explain the value proposition, not being able to explain the problem you're solving, being so dense and technical that you lose people, and you're asking for money. What are you going to do with it, and where is it going to get you?
What about?
I mean, those are the things. I'm sorry, I didn't. You asked about what disqualified you. Those. If you don't hit those things, that's a weakness. If you can't simply explain who your customers are, why they're going to pay for it, and that's going to disqualify you.
Would having significant debt on the financials be disqualifying?
No, it's all part of the package. The reason I hesitated was, why would a startup have significant debt? But you're talking a later stage company.
Well, let's say I've got $20,000 in credit card debt for the company, and I want to take some of your money and pay that off while I clear my books and move forward.
That wouldn't be good. And it's not that we don't want you. It's not that we don't want to pay your credit card debt. Is you want the money not to pay off the mistakes from the past. You want the money to move this forward. And so I think nothing's impossible.
Right.
But
But saying, fix my mistakes so I can go forward is a tough sell.
Yeah. But nothing's impossible. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about the lifetime of an angel investment. You talked about where you come in. You mentioned why it's important for you to know the exit plan. Can you talk about when the angel investment will likely finish, usually does, or anything like that?
Yeah. This 3 to 5 years. The average angel investment, just from talking to other groups, and they probably all lie to each other as much as fishermen do, 7 to 10. I mean, it's really, and you know, I think timeframes have tended to stretch out. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a round in between and stuff, but we're not seeing magic happen in the first 3 years. Yeah. I guess realistically, it's stretching out to 7 to 10. I mean, it just seems to
But
be.
is it a death do us part type of situation? Like you're failing or selling out? And
Oh, I
getting
mean,
money back?
fails happen quicker.
Yeah.
Real exits take longer. And a real exit could be a VC coming in because they want to get rid of all these dumb people from Maine and not have to listen to them. So, they pay us off.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good thing that I was trying to look for. So what kind of things are when you are going to leave, or an angel would leave? One of them could be when a VC comes in, if it IPOs or something like that. What other occasions do you end up leaving? Do you leave on, sometimes
A larger investor, some other kind of investor other than a venture fund, that's pretty much
so
it.
really a large price round is when you.
It's a larger round and priced and yes. Sometimes they'll make you stay in. Go ahead.
Flipping this around a little bit from the founder's perspective, timing, and I don't know if I figured out in my head exactly how to articulate the question, but like how, I assume as a founder, I don't want to wait to the point that everything's screwed up to go and like man, we got like 1 more month of ramp, I better, go get financed, or I better get, capital infusion in some capacity, right? But how does a founder kind of figure out when it's advantageous to look at outside investment and time it appropriately?
When you start going out and looking, I'd want to have 6 months of a runway, but 3 is not impossible. You definitely don't want to be in when you're running out of cash and then you just look desperate. It looks like a bailout. It just doesn't feel good, and it's no fun for you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more like I guess I would always know that there's something I want to do with that money to grow the value of the money.
Yes.
And like I'd have a plan for that. So it's not about backfilling. It's not like staving off the death sentence that's about to happen. But like I don't know. I maybe it's lack of confidence, right? I don't know what it is, but I think about this and I'm like, man, I don't know when or why or we got the how and the what, so far. But the when and the why from the founder side is something I struggle with, and I'm trying to figure out what those answers would be so I can plan for if something like that happens.
Yeah, I can't answer your case, but talk to people early, before you're looking for money. And I said that 3 or 4 times, but it helps you. It helps people get to understand you, and definitely, if I'm going to invest, I want to see this going to moving the company forward, as opposed to, as you said, paying for past mistakes. And I'm not the only one, but to me, it's, you know, I'd like a picture of where you're gonna be and why the company is gonna be more valuable at that stage. Because I'm pretty sure you're gonna have to go out and you'll earn it, raise more money, and I want you to have a good story to tell, so that I'm not just left kind of hanging out. You, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned boards earlier, and for startups that are, you know, friend and family rounds, or, you know, just coming on to the next sort of series of raises, where it's very, it's closely held or something like that, and there's not really a board in place. Is that, do Maine Angels require a board? You said something about a board seat. Is that something that would disqualify a company from Maine Angels?
Right. Anything can happen, but in general, when you get outside capital, you should be a real corporation, and real corporation has a board, and that's what you should, you know, you should have a board.
Great. I'd like to ask for a little thing on boards, maybe you can hear it all.
Yeah, sure.
That might be a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we've talked about it.
Yep. Yeah, we absolutely can.
And, you know,
Thank you for bringing that up.
there's, everybody always wants the board members who have expertise in a particular industry. You also want somebody that has good contacts for your next round. You want somebody who understands basic governance, and you want somebody that sort of understands financial statements, and, you know, one way or another, whether they're on the board or whether they're you.
So
or,
it's strategic board.
yeah, you know, whatever the bases are running a company, you know, should kind of cover those. You know, you may not have somebody that's expert in your particular business, but if they have good business sense and they understand what you're doing, they're going to be helpful. And contacts matter, and the contacts, you know, you're not going to get everything, but contacts with, for your future rounds, contacts with potential customers, contacts with other resources you might need to get. And, you know, boards are good things to have. It's lonely as heck being an entrepreneur. In theory, a board should be a supportive group that you can talk to and get advice and bitch when you're frustrated. You know, all of that is necessary in life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like feeding off of that. I think the concept of boards is also new to me in terms of running the business and having a board. And I think internally this could be totally off, but the thing that scares me about boards is relinquishing any level of control to the board. So I don't know if either one of you guys have talked about that. Like, if you have a board, are you like at the mercy of what their decisions are? Is it more of like, what does that relationship look like?
Early on, you're gonna, you are probably going to own a majority of the company, so you're not totally at the mercy. My experience was that I was a founder, and I was very possessive, and at some point I sort of let go of absolute control and sort of let the board be a real board, and I started doing a better job, and I was happier.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think you're a founder, so I like it.
I'll say one thing that might transfer for lawyer. I had a very good lawyer on one of my boards and probably saved $100,000+ of legal advice because they were on the board and on the team. And then also, you know, people you can trust, we're gonna tell you the hard truths. And, yeah.
I would just add, and Ralph mentioned this, but it was very subtle, but it was a really good point, is you also have your interested and non-interested board members, they're kind of neutral arbiters. Maybe the board member that has a little skin in the game, or you're employed by the company, and you may need to take a vote. And the interested parties, you need to step out of the room, or there may be a governance issue, that you're making a decision inside, maybe for your own compensation package, for example. So the composition of your board is not just these seats on the bus. If you're looking for maybe that attorney, strong finance person, but what is the composition of interested and non-interested parties, which is a legal definition as well.
Carl, can you clarify what you mean by interested and non-interested people?
Yeah, interest may literally have an interest in the decision that is made. So I'm voting on my compensation package, or the LLC owns a piece of real estate, and I own the real estate, and this vote is gonna benefit. And then you have your non-interested person, maybe it's the attorney that come in, they're advising you, but they're fiduciaries, but they're maybe not benefiting from that decision or benefiting as much as the company, for example.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I'd say there's also a valuable role that an advisory board can have, or having someone be a board member. Because you can have people that say, I like what you're doing, I'd like to be on the board, but you know insurance, and I identify, and I can't take the risk of a board member. But an advisory board, you get to know them, you get their advice, and you decide, okay, when I wasn't supposed to have really beat up board members, then they would keep the board member smaller, keep the board advisor larger, and you get a lot of value out of that.
I should have said that, yes.
To Steve's point, there have been, and it's not so uncommon, your advisory board can do a lot of different things for you, advise, be that friend, can be pipeline onto your board. We've had a lot of Dirigo Labs companies or Dirigo Labs companies in the past that have transitioned mentors that they've enjoyed working with their employees to an advisory position. Maybe in your MTI application, you're like, oh, I don't have a full board yet, but I do have an advisory group that's going on here. And then we'd like to transition. That's a conversation with your, your mentor, to your advisor. Maybe your advisor then gets put onto your board eventually, or that's the pipeline onto your board creation right here. It's beginning to show that, I think just one of other Steve's points, that transparency. You're beginning to think about governance, your outside opinions as well. And Maine Angels typically are going to like that, right? And it is located.
Yeah,
having a group of people on that.
advisory board is a way to actually get more people on your side. And you're right, early boards should be small because you want to have some room for other people as you go to future rounds.
Great. Any other, yes, Melissa?
What type of returns are you looking at from the angel perspective?
You want to see possibility of exit that, 5 to 10 times the initial investment. And given the 10-year period, 5 isn't that good. So,
So are the term sheets typically structured at 10 years, and is it structured that the return mainly comes from an exit, or that there's an expectation
in
that
the
there's-
kinds of equity investments, which is different than in your fund,
Right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
the return's going to come from exit.
And not,
Like, go ahead.
not necessarily in between, like a real estate investment.
Correct. And, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's,
Okay.
every other dollar is going into trying to make the company better.
Is there a typical size, and I know it's on the website, from experience, is there a typical raise that the group likes?
Well, you're making me talk to just Maine Angels. I mean,
Yeah.
ask Audrey. She's but I'll generally.
I mean, I know there's a $9,000 limit or like a minimum, and
All of that's negotiable. I mean, the investment can be anywhere from, 50,000 to, within Maine Angels, a couple hundred, but then there's the Dirigo Fund, and that, they will go side by side. So, you could get up to 400,000, it's usually less. I mean, that's why there are other, that's why you typically, we're gonna bring in other angel groups or Maine Venture Fund or something like that as, partnering. If you're looking for, $500,000 or $600,000 is probably doable in Maine. You can help me on this. Beyond that, you're getting into, you're probably bringing in, if it's an angel investment, other angel groups.
And
That said, we had one deal that never should have been an angel deal because it was a factory, but I think there was $1 million came from Maine Angels.
And people like to work together. I mean, that's a lot of these funds are socializing their pipeline pretty regularly. And we're having this conversation strategically. Next week, we have a funding landscape where we'll have representatives from, we'll have Maine Venture Fund, we'll have Alchemy Fund, we'll have Audrey. So everybody will get to bounce around and have conversations with.
And nobody can say, Ralph please don't. I mean, I'm kind of, giving more insider view than, promoting the program, because I'm a mentor, not an investor. What?
You know what happens when they say don't touch that?
Yeah, I know, now
So you
you,
shouldn't have said it.
Well, this has absolutely helped our group prepare for some of those early conversations and get into some of the details that we might otherwise not have heard. We're well over the time we allotted, and so please help me thank Mr. Ralph Nodine.